Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped. Now, since I've been doing YouTube, one of the most competent, all-round, value for money EVs I've spent time in was the Kia E Niro. Well, behind me is the Kia Niro EV, the new one. The question is the new one as good as the old one? So way back in 2019, I was busy filming vintage voltage, and my EV journey had only just begun really. I'd only had a couple of electric press cars, and to be honest, the experience with them wasn't great. But while we were filming vintage voltage, one of the things we needed to do was go to Hamburg in Germany to collect a gearbox for one of the cars that we were converting to run on electric. And the producers of the show had the genius idea that they would send me, Pedro, to Germany in an electric car to pick up the gearbox. And we chose the Niro to do it, the all-electric Niro. So I had it delivered to the house, and in just over 2 weeks, I did 2,000 miles. That video did really well on the channel. I think last counting, it's done over 400,000 views. But at the time of making that film, I couldn't actually say what I was doing. I wasn't allowed to say on YouTube that I was filming a TV show. But anyway, that's all past now. Vintage voltage is now over and done with. But that time, that 2,000 miles in an electric car, taught me a huge amount about the previous generation of Niro, a very impressive car, and also quite a lot about doing long journeys and the kind of angst when it goes well and when it doesn't go so well on a long journey. So when the new Niro came out, I was really excited to get behind the wheel, and I have actually done a video of the new Niro, but only the hybrid and plug-in hybrid variants. This is the battery electric version. Now, last week I had to go up to Inverness for the press launches of the Kia EV9, their new 6 or 7 seat big all-electric SUV. And I thought, as a backdrop to that, it would be quite interesting to run the Niro EV, to run me to the airport up at Stansted and so on. So actually in the last week, I've done quite a lot of miles in this car and got under its skin. The challenge I've had, however, is the weather here in the UK has been abysmal. I should have been filming with this car yesterday, but it was torrential rain all day yesterday, and I have a very short time window today to get my filming done, and the car goes back to Kia tomorrow. So I can't waste any time. Let's get cracking, and I'll tell you what I've discovered about this all-electric Niro. First up, front-end styling does look quite a bit like the Sportage, which I don't think is a bad thing. Slightly different daytime running lights. This is meant to look like the ECG trace when you go to a hospital. But I guess the big difference between this and the two cars I've had on the channel already is, in here, is the charge port. It's got a CCS connector, no great surprise there really, but it's quite interesting having it on the very front of the car rather than one of the side wings. It means you basically need to go front in to a charge point. Now, I've had to carry around quite a lot of stuff this week, and there's plenty of boot space. So with the seats up, 475 litres. If you drop the seats, 1,392 litres of space. Plenty of room in there, whether you've got passengers or not. And then you've got a false floor, and under there is another whole bunch of space. You can carry things like your charge cables, and this car doesn't have a spare wheel, it just has some gunk. Yes, very practical car. As a rear seat passenger, it's not bad in here, you know. It's not the biggest car footprint, so I'm expecting it to be a little bit compromised in the back, but I can sit in here quite comfortably, even with this seat set for me as a driver. I can pull down a central armrest, and yeah, all very nice and comfortable. I've got USB-C charge points in the back of the seats. Yeah, it's nice. In fact, this is the top spec one, so these rear seats are heated as well. I've spent quite a bit of time in this driver's seat, and you can get in a pretty good driving position. Now, one of the things that has changed a little bit about Niro is pricing. So pretty much, if we round the numbers up a little bit, the Niro EV ranges from £38,000 to £44,000. This is the top level trim spec, so this is around about £100,000, which is a lot of money. And I think we've seen this trend in all car manufacturers of vehicles becoming more expensive. And there is an element of me that kind of thinks that's quite sad, because the previous generation of Niro, one of the things that was very attractive about it was its price point made it a really, really interesting buy. This now, especially if you take one of the higher level trim specs, you know, £40,000 or more, it's going to have to deliver as a car. It's going to have a really nice choice of materials. It's going to have great onboard technology, because there are EV car manufacturers, especially some of the Chinese brands, that are bringing cars to market that are maybe £5,000 or £10,000 cheaper than this, and ultimately that is a lot of money. However, this review really, I guess it isn't so much about the ins and outs of the car. I've done that already. I wanted to talk to you about what my week with the car has been like, doing so many miles in relatively cold temperatures, and just have a think about what this car is like as a proposition to buy. So I think we take the car out for a drive, because it's easier for me to film in a car when it's raining than outside a car when it's raining, basically. And I think it's about to rain.
Well, first up, told you it had been raining badly. Now here's a question. Is an electric car the perfect car for going through deep floods? Because at the end of the day, you don't have to worry about the air intake and hydrolocking your engine. I guess you do need to worry about water getting into your battery pack and electrocuting yourself, but it's just minor issues. But yeah, we've had a huge amount of rain come down over the last couple of days, and that means that the road's flooded, basically. Anyway, let's just get into the details of this car and what it's been like to live with. Well, I guess first up, we need to talk the boring stuff. So this car has a 64.8 kilowatt hour battery pack, and Kia quote 285 miles of range. And I'm starting with the boring stuff because that seems to be what you have to do when you review an electric car these days. You need to say how much range it's got. Well, I'll hit you with the bad news. I charged this car up overnight on my 7 kilowatt home charger, and with a full battery pack it was showing just over 200 miles of range. And it's not that cold at the moment, about 6, 7, 8 degrees, that kind of range of temperatures. So I think realistically in the summertime, I think you're going to get 230 to 250 miles. In the winter time, I think it's going to be around about 200 miles. And that for some people might be a big challenge. However, this car does support rapid DC charging. So you can, you know, for the normal drive profile, you can knock yourself out. You probably don't need to plug into public charging that often. But when you do, if you get into a DC charger, that's all well and good. Now, I didn't film this bit, but when I got this car delivered, there was a real nightmare getting the delivery, because the guy delivering the car had a problem earlier on in the day, and he got to me late in the day, and I was due to go up to Stansted to meet up with the Kia press team, and ideally I wanted to get there around about 5 o'clock so I could get a bit of personal admin done and then meet him for dinner. The guy didn't manage to pick up the car and get to me, and rang me at like, I don't know, 4:30 and said, I'm near you, I've just had to plug in so that they can deliver the car with at least 80% charge. I'll be with you about 5:30. So the car was delivered about 5:30, which screwed up my filming plans, because by then it was already dark, and you can't really film in the dark, although I am pushing the boundaries of that at the moment because I've got about 20 minutes of daylight left. And what that meant was I had enough charge to get to the airport, so I could have just driven to the airport, no worries at all. But I knew that on my return back from the airport I was going to fly into Stansted, and then I needed to get home, and I really needed to get home as quickly as possible. So I didn't want to have to plan in a charge stop on the way home from the airport. So I really needed to leave the car at the airport with as full a battery as I could get. So I had two options. One of them was to hope that the hotel had overnight plug-in charging in the car park. The other was to stop at the nearest rapid charger for 40 minutes, do a bit of a volt and bolt, and then leave the car with as much charge. So I decided I was going to be brave and go for the hotel and hope that they had enough charging. And this is why I wanted to tell the story. The hotel we were staying in had 250 car park spaces, but only two AC chargers. So I thought, right, okay, plan A is I'm going to go to the car park and hope that the chargers are empty, because there was no way of finding out whether they were plugged into or not. And if they are empty, absolutely great, bonza, I'll plug in overnight, and if not, I'll go to the nearest DC charger, which was only a couple of miles down the road. So I kind of drove all the way there. I wouldn't call it charge anxiety, but I was thinking, oh man, by this time, by the way, my ETA at the hotel was about 9:20 in the evening. I hadn't eaten, and I was worried that if I had to then go and charge the car, I wasn't going to get a decent meal. And luckily I got to the hotel and the charge ports were both empty, and I plugged the car in, and happy days, I charged up overnight. And the nice thing was it was free as well, which was a bit of a bonus. So that worked out really, really well. So in a way, the end of that story was it was great. I used a destination charger, so I drove to my hotel, charged up. In the morning I had a full battery pack, and then that meant that the next day I could drive the short distance to the terminal, do my flight to Inverness and back, and then when I got back to Inverness my car was full and off I went home. So when you are looking at those destination chargers, that is always a bit of a challenge. You just overtake there, mate. That's all well and good. So it's just a planning thing, really. On my way back, so I actually went from Stansted straight to Heathrow, and then went on a little long weekend away with Tracy, and then I drove back from Heathrow in the dark, and because our bags had been delayed, so I kind of pushed on quite a bit. Oh look, Sportage, very similar face. It's the digital Tiger face, and I had a really great drive back, because they shut the A3, so I got diverted off onto some country roads, and I really got to push on in the car. So let's talk about what it's like to drive. The drive mode wise, it's got Eco, Normal and Sport. When I drove up to Stansted, I was in Eco to kind of eke out as much range out of that battery pack as possible. On my drive back from Heathrow, I had plenty of charge left. I got home with about 40 or 50 miles, so I wasn't really that worried about kind of depleting the battery, so I was able to push on. Now the motor in this car in new money is 150 kilowatts, but in old money that's just over 200 bhp. So it's pretty sprightly. 0 to 62 times about 6.7 seconds, I think, which is, I always think of that as kind of 1980s to early 1990s hot hatch performance. So it is a pretty sprightly car. It doesn't have a particularly high top speed, 103 miles an hour, but let's face it, that's still illegal, unless you're in Germany, of course. And then its manners around corners and so on are actually very good. It's not a massively heavy car. It's about 1,700 kilos, which for an EV is pretty good. I think the battery pack alone is about 400 kilos. So it's actually, for an EV, pretty light, pretty sprightly, pretty good car. Benefit of it having a smaller battery pack, I've talked about kind of getting charged quickly. Now, I guess you could potentially think about charging this car on a standard 3-pin AC charger, the type that plugs into the normal domestic power socket. However, if you were going to be doing that, to charge this battery up to 100% from empty is going to take a long time, and I just don't think that is a sensible, sustainable option for anybody owning an EV. It's fine for a plug-in hybrid, but not a full-blown battery electric. Oh, these pheasants are so stupid. On a 7 kilowatt wall box like I've got at home, 100% charge is going to take you about 9.5 hours, and that's if it's at 0 when you plug it in, and therefore, you know, 6 to 7 hours even for a big charge. So overnight charging, no problem whatsoever. On a 50 kilowatt DC charger, you'll get 100% charge in an hour. But again, don't forget that you very rarely, unless you absolutely have to, you very rarely charge beyond 80% in public, because a really great analogy of this is, imagine you had a car park with 1,000 car park spaces and you had 1,000 cars that you wanted to park in that car park. So now imagine the cars are actually kind of electrons and the car park spaces, that's the battery. So when all the cars start driving in and randomly parking up, to start with, it's not difficult for them to find a car park space. So you can park the cars quite quickly. So the analogy in battery charging is when you're kind of from 10 to about 80%, it's easy to park the cars, it's easy to get the battery charge or the state of charge into the battery. As the car park gets busier and the number of car park spaces gets fewer, it's more difficult for those last few cars to find a car park space and get parked up, and therefore it takes longer. And that's the same thing in a car battery. Once you get beyond 80%, you can still charge up, it just, the charge rate slows down significantly. So in public, if you want to get on your way, it's more time efficient for you to just get on your way at 80%. So although I'm quoting just over an hour to do 100% charge, in the real world you probably would never do that anyway. So even on a 50 kilowatt DC charger, I don't know, 40 to 45 minutes is going to get you a decent amount of range. And they're the most common DC chargers. 100 kilowatt charger, well, the charge time for sure is going to speed up. So on a 100 kilowatt charger, you're looking at about 45 minutes to get a 100% charge. So again, if you do the 80% thing, then probably, I don't know, 20 to 30 minutes, you're going to get a decent amount of miles and be on your way just long enough for a comfort break and a coffee. And then you can get up to 350 kilowatt public chargers, but this car doesn't support that kind of rapid charging. So even if you plugged into one of those, your charge time isn't going to be that much different than a 100 kilowatt charger, because the car doesn't support any faster than that. But that just means living with this car on a day-to-day basis is super easy. Just come into this one. So final impressions of this car, certainly from a performance point of view, a couple of 100 horsepower in a car of this size and weight is actually a lot of fun. It's a really nippy little car to drive. It does have all the departure warnings. You've got a little button on here. Let me just turn that off because that's just super annoying. This level 4 car has loads of features on it, a whole bunch of safety features. It has the highway driver assist mode from Kia, so full adaptive cruise control. It has lane departure assistance. It has an amazing set of headlights on it. In terms of the main infotainment system, if you've driven a Kia or Hyundai, it's fine. It supports Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You do have to plug the phone in to do that, which I don't actually find a problem, because then you don't have to worry about overheating your phone. I like the little strip across the dash that has a dual function. At the moment it's showing my multimedia functions. If I push that little button there, it turns into my climate control features. I really like that. It's a very clever use of a single display, really clever use of space. How does it compare to the original Niro that I drove? Well, it has a lot of features. I think it's a better looking car than the original Niro. I like the original Niro from the back. I never quite got on with the front so much, but I did spend a lot of time in it driving through. We went through France and through the Netherlands and up through Germany. And it proved to be a very efficient car. It proved to be very comfortable. And in the miles I've done in this, it reminds me of that a lot. So if you are in the market for a kind of mid-size family hatch EV, then Kia Niro EV is a really good option. I know price-wise the numbers are quite punchy, but again, if you look at the market, with the exception of some of the Chinese manufacturers, which I really do hope to get on the channel more this year, because one of the things you can't deny is the Chinese are very, very good at EV technology, and there are probably 15 to 20 Chinese car brands that you've never heard of. And we're starting to get some coming into the UK and European markets, people like MG, people like BYD, and I want to try and get into their cars and experience them. But this car, for the price point, I think is a very competent package. The build quality is excellent. You get the Kia 7-year, 100,000-mile warranty, or I think they do a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty, which is impressive, and that's got to make this car a desirable thing. So yeah, I like the Niro EV. I really do. It's a cracking little electric, actually, for the performance and price point and target market. It nails it. Anyway, let me know what you think. If you've enjoyed that one, give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol Ped for plenty more content.